Today we are talking about BeWo ESG reporting solution for Business Central. And today here, my name is Mikko Roininen. I work as a Nordic sales lead in the Business Solutions unit in Azets. And my role is to mainly sell the Business Central as a ERP and accounting solutions to our customers in the Nordics. And with me, I have a pleasure to have today Teemu Jaatinen from Azets.
Yeah, good morning all. Yeah, I'm Teemu Jaatinen and I'm leading the sustainability services of Azets in Finland.
Yes, and then the star of today is the Mikkel from Denmark.
Good morning, everyone. And yeah, nice to meet you. And yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of BeWo, and I'm looking forward to show you what we can with Business Central.
Yeah, that's great. And so that's the people you have today with you, and what we are going through today in our webinar. First, I will quickly go through the assets in brief, what we are doing and that kind of stuff. Then we will go and Teemu will tell you more about the ESG services and carbon accounting in general, just briefly. And then we will go to the main topic, that will be the BeWo introduction and demo, or go through of the service. And at the end, we have time for questions and answers then. And if you have any questions at all, you can use the chat all the time during the webinar, and we will take them at the end, at the latest. But if there is some relevant question, we might be answering that during the webinar as well. Then 2 things to notice: this webinar will be recorded and it will be sent to you afterwards, and you will also receive all the slides we are going through today. So that's coming for you. And then from you, we would like to have, of course, a feedback. Feedback is always a gift, and it's nice to have gifts. So please, if you have just some extra minutes, please give us some feedback. There will be a survey coming afterwards, and there is also a link at the end of this webinar. So then quickly and shortly about Azets. So Azets, we are an international company. We are working and operating in the Nordics, and as well as in UK and Ireland. And today here we are representing our ERP and Business Central related services. But on top of that, our main business areas are like business process outsourcing services and accounting services, HR and recruiting services, payroll services, and advisory services like Teemu is representing here. So we want to be the one-stop shop for all these kind of services that are supporting our customers' business and growth. And then today, the BeWo is related to the Business Central. So we are not going too deep to the Business Central. We have had separate webinars about that already. But just to mention you that the base for everything we are going through here is the Business Central. That is the main ERP solution we are selling, and also the main accounting solution to our like Nordic customers. And we have other solutions as well, but the Business Central is main for our bigger customers. And today we are only focusing on the reporting part, but you know that the Business Central is fully blown ERP system. And then what is this related to Azets? So as mentioned, we use the Business Central as a core for our other services as well. So as mentioned, we can build like accounting services, payroll services, HR, purchase invoice services around the Business Central. That is the core, and that's how we have built it. And today, as you can guess, we are focusing more of this reporting part. That BeWo is created a fancy tool that we can help you to do your need for the carbon accounting and that reporting part. So that is the main scope of today. And then Teemu, please.
Yeah, thanks. And like Mikko just told, like Azets is better known as an accounting service and technology company, but we also have a sizable advisory services, including sustainability services, with teams in Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And our focus on sustainability advisory services is on sustainability advisory and sustainability reporting especially, and meaning helping our customers to set up and develop the reporting, including carbon accounting. And in addition to pure advisory services, we offer several technology solutions for sustainability reporting and carbon accounting together with our partners like BeWo. And then briefly about the carbon accounting. So what are the reasons why companies calculate and report their CO2 and other emissions? And the first one is the need for information. So to understand the carbon footprint of the business, to make informed decisions, set targets, and to be efficient and effective in reducing the negative impacts. And the second driver for it is a strategic point of view, and especially with companies operating in business where the carbon footprint is very high, or companies that have significant positive impact and need to prove it. Then there's of course the expectations from stakeholders, mostly from customers and investors, regulatory requirements on sustainability reporting, and in most often the real driver is a combination of these four motivators. And then why to automate the carbon accounting and what could be the benefits? And the biggest benefit is efficiency. So reducing the manual work needed for data gathering, reporting, keeping the emission factors up to date, etc. And then there's the possibility for real-time monitoring. So to be able to monitor the progress against set targets and to take actions when needed. And also to better respond to recurring and ad hoc reporting needs. So basically, if a company has to report once a year on the emissions, so maybe the automation doesn't bring that many benefits. But with recurring customer needs, for example, so the automation is, if it can be done, it's almost must to do. And then there's still of course the ability to demonstrate reporting capabilities, kind of a walk the talk, which might be relevant especially for companies aiming to be seen as a best of the bunch. And yeah, and from the drivers of the automation, yeah, we get to the BeWo tool, and I hand it over to you, Mikkel.
Thank you.
Yes.
And we're gonna jump to my screen really quick. And can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah, I'm really excited to tell you about BeWo today. It's a short for Better Worlds, and it's a startup that I created together with my other co-founders about 5 years ago. And what we have learned on this journey is that we started with both an Excel sheet based approach. That was our first version of the system, and then we tried to automate it a little bit by allowing our users and companies to upload their data. But throughout this journey, I've thought about this problem for a long time. And this is because, especially if you're going into scope 3, which is your value chain, you have so many data points that you need to take care of to get accurate reports. So what we thought to ourselves was, what if you flip it around and say, okay, what do we have today that we can use to the best of our abilities in terms of data, and actually extract value from that and then work from there? And that's why we're using ERP data. And today we will be focusing on Business Central, but the methodology actually works for any system because we are looking at financial data, which is existing in every company. And then we thought to ourselves, why not look at purchases? Because they say something about the carbon footprint in your supply chain, for example. So that would be scope 3 upstream. And we use those purchases to try to find a way to calculate CO2. And that's what I'm going to show today, is that we look at the financial data to get an accurate carbon footprint for scope 1, 2, 3. We'll also be talking a little bit about what we are seeing in sustainability, and it's mostly from our perspective as a carbon accounting system. What kind of questions are we getting from customers and tendencies that we see in the market? And then we'll move on to showing how we actually automate this, because I think it's really, really important that this carbon accounting exercise is maintainable. It's something that actually works year over year, because we can't just do it as a one-time project or something we have to do at the end of the year and try to figure out what did we do last year. It needs to just work, and that's what I'm trying to show today. So what's happening in sustainability? Of course, we have the EU regulation, which is CSRD, so reporting for large companies in the EU. That's about 50,000 companies on an EU level that are required to report on the annual reports. Of course, there's a bit of uncertainty in the market today how the regulation is going to turn out. I think there's going to be some news from the EU soon. But at the end of the day, I don't see that the focus on carbon emissions will ever go away, as it's just a problem we need to solve. And what we are seeing from our talks with customers is that there's actually less focus on compliance specifically, but more focus on competitiveness and growth. So a lot of companies we're working with actually see sustainability as a license to operate. It's just something that they need to work with in the future to be in the market at all. And from an SMB perspective, you are actually getting hit by this regulation in certain ways, because you have your largest customers, and from the legislation, they actually require to collect data from their supply chain. And this means they need to get data from smaller businesses as well. And this is the only way you can actually demonstrate these improvements year over year, is that you work with your value chain. And that's why we see that beyond just the 50,000 companies in the EU, we actually have 1.5 million companies that might start to get these CO2 data requests. So exactly asking, what's the carbon emissions of this product or service that you're providing? And we just know to solve this issue, we need something automated. Of course, it needs to be compliant, and it needs to be integrated with the systems we have today. And that's why we're moving on to the next topic. So the first version that we built, and many of the tools that are out there today that doesn't use our methodology, it will take you at least 200 hours of work and 4 months of data collection and calculation to complete the annual carbon emissions report. And this is something we just need to remove. We need to remove the complexity, because manual entry is just it just takes too long to enter line after line what has the CO2 been on this thing, this activity. But we also see that there's also a big issue with human errors. That is, when you're registering data, you might miss a few things. And lastly, just understanding this space is just complex, and we don't think it should be something that you're an expert in. You should be an expert in driving your business and making change, instead of knowing how you register CO2 data. And before we jump into how do we actually do this, I'll be explaining a little bit about scope 1, 2, 3. So if you're not familiar with it yet, it's split into direct emissions and indirect emissions. And you should see yourself in the middle, which is the direct, so scope 1, which are the emissions that occurs under your own operations. So for example, if you are driving in your own vehicles or you're burning fuel at your own locations, then the emissions are direct. It's something that you are emitting. But the big puzzle piece actually comes from indirect emissions, which is scope 2 and 3. In scope 2, we have purchased energy as a whole, which could be electricity, heating, also steam and cooling that you're purchasing from a supplier. So you're actually responsible for the energy that you are using, even though the emissions didn't happen in your location. And this is the same with scope 3. You have upstream emissions, which are your supply chain, which is before your product or service leaves the door. Everything from that manufacturing stage, and this could be all the things you're purchasing throughout the year. So this is something we're looking for: purchase goods and services. We're looking for waste, business travel, capital goods, transportation, leased assets, and the few energy related in your business central system. Employee commuting can be a bit tricky because you don't register the data necessarily day to day. So that's something you will have to do besides this. Also, indirect emissions, there's very, very few data points in companies' operations today that we can use. So it's quite limited on that part, but you get a quite extensive scope 1, 2, and 3 result using our methodology. And this is where we have 6 steps towards this CO2 reporting. So it all starts with the ERP connection. This is where the data resides. We have this approach that let's automate 95% of it, and you can always enhance the last 5% yourself. But the main thing comes from the ERP system and your activities there. And in the end, we want to have daily updated CO2 reports with actually one of the best accuracy levels that you can get out there, because we're looking at so much data. And if you have another system than Business Central, or are not in Business Central yet, if you're planning to, we do have a way to do this. It's coming in one of the last slides, but the plug and play version of Business Central is what I'm going to show today. So it all starts with our connection. We have built an app, an extension that you can install on your Business Central, which gives us the permissions to read the right data. These integrations are quite complex, so Azets will be a huge part of the setup to get the right permissions and everything in these phases. Then we need to configure the integration together. And it would be good if you have someone from finance who knows the bookkeeping process and the controlling of that. And you also need Azets on the technical side to verify that we can actually connect to the right things. The first thing we're going to do is we need to enable the companies that you want to include in your reporting. So Business Central, you can of course have many different companies across different countries, and with our system you can add them all, but there might be some reasons why you might not want to add them all yet for your reporting. Then we need to look at a time perspective. So which reporting years do we want to include in the carbon baseline? Maybe you've already done some scope 1, 2, and we want to align it with the current reporting that you have. So we can go back in time and choose, for example, 2024 and 2023 to get a sensible time scale, and we can actually make some comparison between the years. And lastly, the biggest thing as the setup is that you will choose the expense accounts. So we only look at expenses when we're trying to do carbon accounting, and the way that we filter for the right data is by looking at your chart of accounts. So and adding the accounts that make sense. So for example, purchases of items or computers or electricity or office supplies or similar we need to include, but we don't want your VAT or other things. And of course we have a guide available, and this is something that can actually be done in about 30 minutes or so. Then we actually done with the setup. One of the big benefits of this approach is that we want to keep ESG and finance in sync. So the main process is the financial process. This is something that exists today, and we don't want to add too much overhead in the administration costs or resource use, and that's why we want to keep it in sync with finance. So, for example, when you do get you do have to talk with the auditor, they understand your financial reporting completely because they have to look at it, and it will be quite easy to make the jump over to the CO2 world because you have a link to every single transaction in the finance side of it on the CO2 part. So we can actually link back to the vouchers or transactions that you have in the system, and this is quite a big benefit. Then we start to have the magic of the system, which is the actual scanning of all the data based on the setup. So this will take about 8 to 24 hours, depending on how much data you have. And we've built this tool called the data pipeline, where you can see how your documents are being processed. And in this data pipeline, we're trying to do the very best, and I will talk about what we do when we're scanning for CO2. And the main majority of the data will land in the box that is called ready, but there's always going to be some examples where our AI engine will say, hey, you need to take a look at this because you have hit a difficult example or an error where we couldn't read the data. We are scanning for invoices, and invoices are usually very good. But for example, if you're looking at employee expenses, the manually scanned invoices or receipts when they scan with their phone, they might be blurry sometimes, which can make it difficult. But it's usually very limited, the kind of data that you need to look at. So while you wait, we're actually looking at every single document that you have for CO2. And the way that we do it is that we go through the chart of accounts that we saw before in the setup phase. And when you have enabled an account, we will look at every single transaction within that account for the year. And this means that there's going to be an invoice document, for example, a PDF for electronic invoice, where we can scan it. So if it's a PDF, we use document scanning tools to get the line data out, because it actually says a lot about what you purchased. So using the financial, like the entries, the financial transactions is usually not enough for an accurate result. So we have to dive into the documents. And this is where we will try to extract from the text with AI. For example, how much of a product have you purchased? So not only on a cost-based approach, but also on for example, the weight, so the kilos of coffee in this example. And we will try to link it to an emission database, and we pretty much have all the open public databases out there. So there are thousands of options to choose from. And then we move on to our way to select the right emission factor. Because when you're reporting under the greenhouse gas protocol, meaning scope 1, 2, and 3, it's best if you try your best. So we can start on a supplier-based level. We're actually starting to see suppliers that are stating CO2 on the invoices, and this is definitely going to be the future for how you communicate your CO2 to your customers. So it doesn't have to be via email or an Excel output, but you can actually share it on every single document that you, every single sales invoice that you share with your customers. But if you don't have that information yet, we'll move on to the product-based level, and this is where we match against a specific product. And if we can't find that, for example, in a product database like EPDs, you have to go on an average product or an average activity, which is activity-based, which means that yes, we scale with for example, the weight or the kilowatt hours or the liters or some volume, but it's still an average calculation. And lastly, if we cannot do any of the things above because the data is simply not there, we have to do spend-based, which is matching against an industry or product category. And usually it's a higher result because it's usually a worst case scenario, but that's just what you have to do. And when we are outputting these reports, it's very important that we also state for every single line what is the emission factor that we use, and also the reference to the document, so you can double check it as an auditor. And lastly, also the estimation approach that we have. We've actually also built AI for some very specific things. So scope 2, for example, your electricity bills or heating bills, they don't look like a normal invoice usually. And this means that we will have to extract the kilowatt hours from the text within. So we're actually loading all the text into our AI and extracting that automatically to get an accurate result. Because you can't use spend based on scope 2 or 1, so you need this. And we've done it for electricity bills, heating, gas, water, fuel costs, all kinds of scenarios to get these information out. In Business Central, you also have quite a big opportunity to enhance your calculations. And our approach is that it's better that you enhance your ERP data and you use it for CO2 reporting rather than you have the system on the side where you're doing a lot of manual work. So a lot of our customers goes back into their ERP system and they actually enhance their calculations by adding information on their items. So for example, if you add a net weight on your items, it's actually quite easy for us to do activity-based because we know what was the weight of a product. So there's quite a lot of opportunities here by using the Business Central items if you have warehousing today or similar. Also, we'll be linking back to all the data in Business Central. So for example, we all have data on the vendors, we have data on your dimensions, and this means that we can actually start to say things about what was the emissions for this vendor in 2024. And you can actually start to get some pretty nice results on this. Okay, so this was the processing of it. It actually happens in the background, and you need to be quite patient on the AI to scan thousands of lines. But now it's your turn to review your results, because AI is good, but it's not perfect. Humans aren't either as well. So that's why we need a good way to review data efficiently. And from experience of doing this for about 5 years, the 80-20 rule applies to CO2 reporting as well. So for example, if you're looking at your top 20% vendors, you'll be looking at 80% of all your CO2 emissions. And this is the process we want you to go through. So look at the biggest CO2 categories first, and then you have this long tail you can of course review later. Our system allows that you can review many lines at once, and you can actually change the CO2 category of many lines at once as well. So you might have 500 lines of, for example, fuel purchases of gasoline, petrol, and you can change all of this if it's not the right fit. And depending on the company, we expect this to take about 2 to 20 hours of work for like a whole year of reporting. So this is quite faster than the manual approach. For the next phase, you're moving into the reporting. We built some standardized dashboards for common accounting, so you can always see your, call it reporting statement, which I'm going to show in the next slide. But you can also dive into your emissions over time. You can see the developments year by year. You can see your largest vendors, your largest CO2 categories, and all those things that you need to understand your company from a CO2 perspective. And what people usually output from our platform in their ESG reports is that they have this complete statement of scope 1, 2, and 3, where they specify exactly what has happened within the reporting year, and they can bring it directly into the ESG report. And we have made this focus because the issue that we see is that this small picture that you see on the left side here is actually over 100,000 lines of CO2 that we need to squish together and make the calculation. And you just need a system that is dynamically calculates these things day to day. And that's why I'm not going to talk about the other ESG disciplines today, is because we have said that as a startup we can only solve one thing really, really well, and we want to remove the complexity from the heaviest part of compliance. And this means that you can actually bring your results into your ESG report in the category that is ESRS E1 for climate change, which is the data points you see on the left here. I also have, and we'll be sharing this afterwards, a bit more overview into the different topics that we can provide support from. But essentially, you can take all of these different reporting measures off with our methodology. Lastly, we think that CO2 should actually not stop there. It should come back into the business intelligence process, because this is actually where you will start to work with your data. This is where you will start to spot reduction opportunities. And we tend to have customers that want to do it in, for example, Power BI, if you have that, or other BI tools we can also connect to if needed. And this is because there are many different cases of splitting this data. We also see some customers that want to communicate their carbon footprint for each customer. And you can actually, for example, use dimensions from your Business Central to split on let's say you have a project number or a customer reference for your expenses, then you can actually start to split CO2 by these dimensions. And there's some benefits to this. I think it's good if you help your large customer with CSRD data. They're gonna thank you a lot that you can help them in their ESG reporting. And we also start to talk to some companies that has a higher wind change, because you just need to communicate your carbon footprint. A few examples of this is, for example, the company we work with, Change Group here in Denmark. They are doing IT consultancy, and for them it has been very important to use the tool to identify where they can reduce, but also communicate efficiently on the consultancy projects, what kind of things go into it. For example, it's not only human labor, but there's also a lot of transportation of employees back and forth to customers. There's some coffee purchases and all those kind of things. We also work with a company, CH Byg, here in Denmark. They're a construction company, and for them it has been very important for them to identify which of their materials are emitting the most, and they have actually implemented a procurement policy on behalf of this to try to make some changes. We also work with Bones restaurants in the hospitality business, and for them they have a big job at hand, is that they want to move towards carbon neutrality, and for them they have got a lot of insights into, for example, their menus and what they can do with our data. For the pricing, the standard Business Central starts from 268 euros a month, but our we can say pricing scales with the amount of lines that you have. And don't worry, this is something we can actually figure out when you try the system out. So the system will count your lines for you and make an estimate of how many lines you need. If you're curious about it today, our pricing, we have a pricing calculator on our website where you can use the slider on the top to actually start to look at how many lines you need. And we usually look at purchase invoices. So if you go back and count how many purchase invoices do you have on a monthly or yearly basis, you can make a pretty good estimate of what you need. If you are looking at other options in the Business Central ecosystem, there's of course there's some built-in functionality in Business Central, and we also have continuous sustainability as an option in this segment of the market. For us, it's very important that that this doesn't become a manual process. And this is where our core value is probably that the AI takes care of this complexity, so you don't have to do the manual registration each day. But if you look at Business Central sustainability module, you will have to put CO2 on every single line in Business Central, but you also have to import your emission factors. Continuous sustainability, they have integrated emission factors in the system, but you still need to work with this day to day in the bookkeeping workflow and register CO2. And for us, it's all about saving that time in the bookkeeping process. And if you just do a thought example, is that it takes about 30 seconds to apply a CO2 value for a line in Business Central. This can actually be a lot of work if you're thinking of that you have over 50,000 lines of purchases throughout the year. It would actually be 11 weeks of non-stop manual data entry, and then that's what we want to avoid. So all in all, the process is we can set it up with Azets in about half an hour to an hour on a meeting for Business Central Cloud. And then there will be this phase where the AI needs to do its work. And lastly, you can expect about 2 to 20 hours of work with reviewing and releasing your annual report. Of course, you can do this on a monthly or quarterly basis, and it's going to be a lot less time each month or quarter. And if you're thinking, what about on-premise? I don't have Business Central. This is a really good question, and we've thought a lot about this. The way that we do it is that we have a data model. So the exact same data that we are reading from in Business Central is actually also available in other systems, like if you're on Nav or AX or SAP or some other system. The same data is actually going to be there because it's used for the financial reporting. And the way that we do it is that we have a data warehouse where you can host the data in your own Azure tenant. Of course, Azets can help set it up, but essentially you will be providing the exact same data as what we're looking at, for example, in Business Central, and we can access that in the cloud and do the exact same calculations that we do with Business Central. So this is how we would do it. If you're curious about this and you need to book a meeting already today, we would like to offer a free ESG assessment, and it's a one-time meeting where we have of course a bunch of questions for you to understand your business and what automation options you have today. But you also get 14 days to try us for free. So we can start the CO2 engine, and you can look at some results and get a feeling of how quick is this. And lastly, we will also in the meeting, of course, recommend where you can take your next steps in your ESG journey, even if you're a CSD customer or a CSD company or a VSME company. And that's if you're on premise, we can also try it out. It's going to be a manual extract of your data from the system, but let's say we can just make a test of a month's data, and then you can get a feeling of it as well. I'll also be sharing a lot of helpful resources if you're curious about it. Yeah, thank you, and over to Mikko.
Yeah, thank you, Mikkel, and as you will get this presentation later, you can get the links as well. So and then if you go back to actually I can take the presentation now, so just a moment. Let's try this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
And the presentation? It should be the free assessment, right? Yeah. So as Mikkel told you that please contact us. So we have had a few meetings with our customers, and it has been quite nice session. So we can then have also Teemu and our advisory services involved, so we can then help you understand the reports as well if you need. So I think that has been quite easy way to get know of this like a topic and then try out the BeWo solution. As mentioned, some of you are still using the old version, like on-prem versions, but are looking for a journey to the cloud. So as discussed, we can have a meeting and already see how we can get this working for you on on-prem version, and then when you're moving to the SaaS, then it will be easier with this direct ready-made integration and things like that. But we can go that through with you, because as you know, we all have you all have a little bit different setups maybe in the ERP, so we would like to go through what is exactly your situation and how we can help you with this topic. So feel free to contact me or Teemu or Mikkel together, and then we can book that meeting together. Good. So I think that was actually the last slide of the presentation, but I think there was maybe one question at this point. So what about the data that is not in the ERP system? I think you maybe a little bit covered that, but can you open that a little bit?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. So the ERP system will usually cover the 95%, so almost everything. And we of course have a feature where you can upload data on the site, and you can actually make a reference to a document, so you always have that data source available. So a good example would be that one of our customers, they added it on Business Central, and they had 4 locations in 4 different countries, and 3 of them they could get electricity and heating bills, but for the last one it wasn't shared by the office manager that they had, because they just had a room or like a small location, so they didn't have the information, and then they uploaded that on the site. So that's usually what we experience.
Good. Teemu, do you have any questions?
No, we have like 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Sebastian collected. So how do you take transportation into the calculations?
It's actually a good question. So transportation can either be yourself, of course. You can be transporting things in your own vehicles. Then we will be picking that data up from, for example, gas bills. So if you're purchasing diesel or petrol for your vehicles, it will be scope 1. But you can also have transportation and distribution in scope 3 if you're using a third-party supplier. And that's where you will usually get a bill. So you're responsible for the transportation that you are purchasing or have a cost. And we can see that the distributor might have, of course, a cost, but sometimes they're also sharing either CO2 values or kilometers of the distance that they have covered. And we can use that information to get a good sense of what was in transportation and distribution in your scope 3.
Yeah, thanks. And then there was can the platform handle multiple organizations? For example, in a case of a group of companies with different reporting needs. So.
Exactly. Yeah, you can add multiple integrations to one tenant. So you can actually, let's say you have 3 companies in Business Central Cloud. You can get that started almost today. And you might also have 2 other companies that are on premise, and then you would be looking at the data warehouse solution, and then all the data can meet in one place at the end. So that's entirely possible.
So I think that was the last question, and now if there is still some questions you can put on the chat. We have a good time still to answer those questions. If there is something new, I try to look on the chat here for the questions, but I cannot see any new questions. So if that's all, then I would like to thank you all for your participation. So as said, this will be this is recorded, so you will get the recording, and then you will also get this presentation we went through. So there is all the possibilities to click the links, and there you can also find our contact information if you have any more questions, or you would like to arrange a meeting with us to go through, and so we can demo the BeWo with your own data because that's usually the most usable way, because you know your data, and then we can show you how you can work out your reports with the BeWo.
Yeah, actually, Mikko, we got one more question. So can you make custom views?
And that's actually, so we have, of course, our dashboard. And our approach is that we can build a nice dashboard for carbon accounting, but many of the almost all customers wants to export their data and actually use a visualization tool for this. So for example, we're working with a restaurant. They want to have a custom Power BI dashboard for each restaurant, right? So that's not something our tool can handle, but then you do it in Power BI, and I think that's really a conversation you should have with Azets if you're curious about how you can use. You may be already using Business Central or Power BI today, so it might be just adding a new page on your current setup if needed.
Okay, thank you. I think that this was a really good presentation, and I hope we all enjoyed this. And I think this was quite informative. And as mentioned, please contact us so we can go through more your situation then. Okay, then I would like to wrap this up. Thank you, Mikkel. Thank you, Teemu.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And all participants, so have a nice day. See you later on.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.